The night I learned the truth about Daniel, my husband of 15 years, I did not scream. I did not throw things. I did not even cry. I asked one question, with a calm I did not know I could hold. Who is she? And why do you think she is better than me? He froze. His lips trembled for a moment, then settled into a thin, almost guilty line. Finally, he spoke. Laura, she's younger, she's fresh. She hasn't been through as much as you. She makes me feel alive again. That's something you can't give me anymore. The words hit me like a hammer, blunt and merciless, not because I still loved him the way I once did. That love had been fraying for years, but because of the casual cruelty, the simple way he tossed aside a woman who had built a life with him, carried his child, nursed his wounds, worked 2 jobs so he could start his company, and stood beside him through every high and low, fresh, alive, as if I were nothing but spoiled fruit, something to discard once the shine had faded. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I picked up my phone, opened a group chat with women I trusted, old friends, colleagues, allies who knew the price women pay when they devote themselves to men who later call them boring. I typed, with hands that did not tremble. I have a man who is charming on the surface but rotten inside. He loves freshness. He's yours if you want him. Cheap price. Almost free. The messages started flooding back. Laughter, shock, curiosity, jokes about what kind of man I was selling. One of them guessed it was Daniel and warned me not to joke about such things. Another said if it was really him, she wouldn't dare, because I'd chase her down the street with a knife. I glanced at the kitchen counter where, only an hour earlier, I had dropped the knife I'd almost carried to the hotel when a stranger texted me Daniel's room number. My friend wasn't wrong. But I had stopped myself outside the hotel that night. My mother's words had echoed too loud in my mind. A man who cheats is like rotten fruit. No matter how much you wash it, it will always be spoiled. If you try to keep it, it will only poison you. When it happens, you walk away. Don't stab yourself with the shard of someone else's betrayal. I waited outside instead, watching him walk out of the hotel with a lipstick mark on his neck, watching the woman follow behind, giggling, holding his hand like she had won something rare. And then, calmly, I asked him the question that revealed everything. Who is she, and why do you think she is better than me? When he answered, when he reduced me to nothing but used up, I understood something vital. I could not change him, but I could change myself. That was the start. The morning after, I made coffee as if nothing had happened. Daniel sat across from me, tired, nervous, waiting for me to scream, or to cry, or to demand explanations. Instead, I looked at him like a business partner who had broken a contract. You've made your choice. Now I'll make mine. His shoulders sagged in relief, as if he thought I would forgive him. Laura, I listen. I swear she doesn't mean anything to me. You're my wife. I love you. You know that. I held his gaze. If you loved me, you wouldn't need someone else. He reached across the table, but I pulled my hand back. His touch had become dirty to me. Later that day, I called a lawyer, quietly, discreetly. I didn't file for divorce yet, not because I doubted myself, but because I knew this wasn't just about leaving him. It was about reclaiming every piece of myself he had taken. For years, I had made him the center. His business trips, his ambitions, his moods. I had wrapped my life around his. That was over. I returned to work with a fire that startled even me. I had left my career in architecture years ago when our daughter was small, supporting Daniel's startup instead. I took freelance design projects on the side, but nothing serious now. I reached out to old contacts, updated my portfolio, and began saying yes to opportunities I had once put aside. At first, it was awkward. I had been out of the main circles for too long. My friends in the industry were polite, cautious. Some probably thought I wouldn't last, but I stayed late, studied new software, and took the hardest projects no one else wanted. I learned again how much I loved creating, how alive I felt shaping something solid and lasting, unlike the fragile promises of a man chasing freshness. Daniel noticed the change. He asked one night as I typed away at the dining room table, "Why are you working so much all of a sudden? I can take care of us." You know, I looked up. You don't get to say that anymore. His jaw tightened. He didn't argue, but I could see the anger under his skin. He wasn't used to me pulling away. He wasn't used to being irrelevant. The first time I saw him with her again, in public, was at a restaurant. I had gone out with friends from work. Across the room, Daniel sat with the same woman, leaning close, laughing too loudly, trying too hard. He saw me. He froze. then smiled like nothing was wrong. She touched his arm, not even noticing me at first. When she did, she looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and triumph. I didn't flinch, I didn't storm over. I simply lifted my glass of wine, held his gaze, and toasted silently from across the room. He looked away first. That was the moment I knew I was winning. Not because I wanted him back, but because I no longer cared. Still, the betrayal had left scars. Nights when I couldn't sleep, mornings when my chest felt heavy with the weight of 15 years wasted. I went to therapy. Something I had always thought I was too strong to need, but strength, I learned, wasn't pretending you were fine. Strength was choosing not to drown in silence. I told my therapist about the knife I almost carried into the hotel, about the way my mother's voice had stopped me, about the rage that still simmered. She listened, then asked, "What do you want now, Laura?" Not from him, not from the past, from your own life. The question stayed with me. What did I want? For the first time in years, the answer had nothing to do with Daniel. I wanted to rebuild my career. I wanted to travel. I wanted to write again. Something I had given up when I became someone's wife and mother. And maybe, one day, I wanted to know what it felt like to be loved without betrayal, without conditions. Daniel's downfall came faster than I expected. His mistress, her name was Melanie, I finally learned was not the innocent he pretended she was. She wanted money, status, and she knew how to get it. Soon, whispers began spreading in his business circles. Melanie bragged to the wrong people. Stories leaked. Investors pulled back. Daniel panicked. He came to me late one night. Eyes hollow. "Laura, I need your help. The board is losing faith. You know how to talk to people, please. Just come to the meeting tomorrow and stand by me." I stared at him. The man who had once promised me forever, who had tossed me aside for something fresh. No. His face crumpled. "You don't mean that." "I do." I closed the door in his face. That night, lying in bed alone, I felt a wave of grief. Not for him, for the years I had lost, for the girl I used to be before I tied my worth to a man's attention. But grief was cleansing. It stripped away illusions. In the morning, I opened my laptop and began drafting plans for a project of my own, something bold, something that would carry my name alone. I wasn't just leaving Daniel. I was reclaiming myself. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. The weeks after I told Daniel no were some of the hardest I had lived through. He called, he texted. He showed up at my door each time. I answered with the same flat refusal. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I knew what going back would cost me: my dignity, my sanity. The rest of my life, he begged, sometimes with tears in his eyes, sometimes with anger, his voice raised, accusing me of being cold, of not remembering what we had built together. He threw our daughter's name into the conversation more than once. "You're breaking up our family, Laura. Think about her. Think about what she'll lose." I thought about it. Every time he said it, I thought about it, and then I remembered what she would gain. A mother who was no longer humiliated in silence. A mother who showed her that love without respect was poison. A mother who could stand on her own feet and look the world in the eye. I stayed firm. Work became my lifeline. I took on a redevelopment project that no one else wanted: an old warehouse by the river, rotting, filled with mold, dismissed as worthless. But I saw something in it. I saw potential. I saw my own reflection in its broken beams and peeling walls. The first time I walked through it, hard hat on, dust sticking to my clothes, I whispered under my breath, "We'll bring you back to life. Just wait." The crew looked at me like I was crazy, but I didn't care. I poured myself into the work. I fought city permits, negotiated with suppliers, worked late into the night drawing plans until my hands cramped. Slowly, the warehouse began to transform, brick by brick, beam by beam. It was like stitching myself back together. My name began circulating again in architecture circles. "Laura Thompson, remember her? She's back." I was back. At home, silence settled in. Our daughter, Emma, was away at college. The house felt too big, too empty. Sometimes I wandered from room to room, touching walls we had painted together, remembering arguments, laughter, long nights when we thought we had forever. I let the memories come. I didn't push them away, but I also didn't drown in them. Therapy helped, journaling helped, long runs by the river helped. I told myself, every morning, every night, this pain is not permanent. You are not defined by his betrayal. Some days I believed it, some days I didn't. But I kept saying it until it started to feel true. Daniel's decline became public. He lost 2 major investors. Rumors spread faster than truth. Melanie was seen with another man, one richer, more powerful. Daniel tried to hide it, but it was all over social media. Pictures of her laughing in someone else's car, her hand on a new man's knee. I didn't laugh. I didn't gloat. Instead, I felt a strange, heavy pity. He had thrown away a marriage, a family, stability for a woman who used him until someone shinier appeared. But pity is not love, and it is not forgiveness. One evening, he showed up again. I opened the door only because I was tired of the knocking. He looked wrecked. His suit was wrinkled, his tie loose, his eyes red as if he hadn't slept. "Laura, please, I can't do this anymore. She's gone. The business is collapsing. I need you." The words made me pause, not out of sympathy, but out of clarity. He didn't say he loved me. He didn't say he was sorry. He said he needed me. For years, I had been his anchor, his nurse, his cheerleader, his safety net. He had never needed to stand alone because I had always caught him. That night, I refused. "You need to figure it out yourself, Daniel. I'm not your solution anymore." His face twisted with disbelief, then rage. "You've changed." "Yes," I said quietly, "I have," and I closed the door. Emma came home for Thanksgiving. I dreaded the conversation. She was sharp, sensitive, and loved her father despite everything. We sat in the kitchen, peeling potatoes. She asked, "Mom, why are you and Dad so distant?" I took a breath. I had promised myself I would never lie to her, but I also wouldn't weaponize her father's mistakes against him. "Your dad and we've had problems. He made choices that hurt me deeply. We're figuring out what that means for us." She frowned. "Are you divorcing?" "Yes." Her eyes filled with tears. She put down the knife, wrapped her arms around me. "I'm sorry, Mom." I held her close, whispering, "Don't be sorry. We'll be okay. I'll be okay. And you will too." She nodded against my shoulder. "I just want you to be happy." That night, after she went to bed, I cried into my pillow. Not for Daniel. For the years Emma had lived inside a house that wasn't as solid as it looked. But even through tears, I knew this was the right path. The warehouse project reached completion 6 months later. We held a small event to celebrate. City officials came, local business owners, a few reporters. As people walked through the building, touching polished wood and gleaming metal, I felt pride swell in my chest. It was beautiful, alive again, just like me. A journalist asked, "What made you take on something everyone else thought was impossible?" I smiled, steady and sure, because I knew what it was like to be dismissed as broken. I knew what it felt like to be told you were finished. I wanted to prove them wrong, and I did. The article ran with the headline, "Architect Laura Thompson Revives the Unrevivable." That night, sitting alone with a glass of wine, I reread the piece and whispered to myself, "Yes, that's who I am. Not his wife, not his safety net. Me." Daniel tried one more time. It was raining. I was locking up the warehouse after a late meeting when he appeared under the streetlight, soaked through, his hair plastered to his forehead. "Laura, just listen to me. I know I hurt you. I was stupid, blind. I thought I needed excitement, but I needed you. Only you, please. Give me another chance." His voice cracked. He was desperate. I looked at him. The man I had once loved, the man who had fathered my child, the man who had betrayed me without hesitation, and I felt nothing, not love, not longing, just emptiness. "You had your chance," I said quietly, "and you threw it away." He stepped closer. "We can fix this." I shook my head. Some things don't get fixed. Some things get left behind. I walked away, my heels echoing on the wet pavement. I didn't look back. After that night, he stopped coming. News spread that his company had filed for bankruptcy. Melanie was gone. His friends, once loyal, had vanished. Emma told me later that he moved into a small apartment. He still called her, still tried to be her father, but even she sounded weary. I didn't stop her from seeing him. He was her father. That bond was hers to manage, not mine. But I no longer had to carry him. I carried myself. Slowly, I began to live again, not just survive, live. I joined a book club. I traveled with friends Paris, Barcelona, the Grand Canyon. I laughed until my stomach hurt. I danced in kitchens. I sang along to songs I hadn't heard in years. I started writing again, short essays, reflections, pieces about resilience and rebuilding. A friend submitted one to a women's magazine without telling me. They published it. The response was overwhelming. Letters from women who said my words felt like their own stories. For the first time, I realized my pain could help others heal too, and that gave me a new kind of strength. One evening, sitting by the river, notebook on my lap, I thought about my journey. The betrayal had shattered me, but it had also stripped away everything false, everything fragile. What was left was something unbreakable. I whispered into the wind, "Thank you for leaving, Daniel," not because I forgave him, but because losing him gave me back myself. The spring after Daniel disappeared from my life for good, I turned 50. I thought it would feel heavy, like a door closing. Instead, it felt like a sunrise. Emma came home, carrying balloons and a cake. My friends filled my living room with laughter, bottles of wine, stories that spilled into the night. Someone asked me how it felt to be half a century old. I smiled and said, "It feels like the beginning," and I meant it. Work blossomed. The warehouse project had sparked a wave of new opportunities. Developers called me with proposals. Young architects asked me for mentorship. I started speaking at conferences, something I had once been too timid to do. The more I spoke, the more I realized I had something valuable to give, not just design, but perspective. I knew what it meant to start over. I knew how to turn ruin into strength. At one event, a woman approached me after my talk, tears in her eyes. "You don't know me," she said, "but I left a husband last year after finding out about his affairs. Listening to you today, I felt hope again, like maybe my life isn't over." I held her hands. "It isn't over. It's just different now, and sometimes different is better." Her gratitude stayed with me long after. I understood then that my story was no longer just mine. It belonged to every woman who had been told she wasn't enough. Still, healing wasn't linear. There were nights I woke sweating from dreams of betrayal, mornings when loneliness pressed hard, times when the silence of the house gnawed at me. But I faced those moments with honesty. I didn't numb them. I didn't run. I let myself feel, then let the feelings pass. Boundaries became my compass. I said no when I needed to. No to overworking myself. No to toxic friendships. No to men who thought flattery was a free pass. And slowly, saying no gave space for deeper yeses. Yes to joy. Yes to rest. Yes to new beginnings. It was at a fundraising gala that I first met Michael. He was a widower, a lawyer, with kind eyes and a quiet presence, not flashy, not pushy. He spoke to me with genuine interest, asking about my work, listening without interruption. At first, I kept my guard high. I had learned the hard way what charm could hide. But Michael wasn't charming in that shallow way. He was steady, thoughtful. We met for coffee the next week, then lunch, then dinner. One evening, walking me to my car, he asked softly, "Do you ever think about love again? Real love?" The question pierced me. I looked at him, at the man who stood patient and respectful beside me. "I think about it," I admitted, "but I also think about trust. And trust doesn't come easy anymore." He nodded. "It shouldn't. Trust is precious. Take your time. I'll be here if you want to try." That patience touched me more than flowers or flattery ever could. Dating in my 50s was not like dating at 20. I didn't need someone to complete me. I was already whole. What I needed was a partner who respected that wholeness. Michael never rushed. He never demanded. He invited. He shared. He showed up. One night, as we sat on my porch watching the sun dip into the horizon, he said, "I know you've been hurt. I won't pretend I can erase that. But I can promise this: I'll never betray your trust, not for anything." Tears stung my eyes. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe men like him still existed. But I also knew promises meant nothing without action. So I watched, I waited, and he kept proving it. In small ways, honesty in the little things, presence when I needed comfort, respect for my boundaries. It was slow, cautious. And maybe that was why it felt real. At work, I began my most ambitious project yet. A community center for women rebuilding their lives after divorce, abuse, or loss. It was more than architecture, it was personal. I remembered the nights I had felt alone, the days when the weight of betrayal pressed so heavy I could barely breathe. I wanted to create a space where women could breathe again. I gathered a team, secured funding, fought through endless red tape. There were setbacks, delays, arguments, but each time, I thought about the women who would walk through those doors, searching for hope. That vision carried me forward. When the groundbreaking ceremony finally came, I stood before the crowd, hard hat in hand, voice steady. This isn't just a building, it's a declaration that no matter what life takes from us, we can rise again, stronger, wiser, whole. Applause thundered, my chest ached with pride. Daniel showed up once more, out of nowhere, at a coffee shop. He looked older, worn, his hair graying, his suit cheap. He smiled faintly, almost shyly. "Laura, you look good." I studied him. The man who had once shattered me. I felt nothing but distance. "Hello, Daniel?" We talked politely for a few minutes. He asked about Emma. I asked about his health, then he sighed, looking down at his hands. "I think about us a lot. About what I lost." I nodded. "You lost me, and I gained myself?" He flinched, then nodded slowly. "I hope you're happy I am." We parted without bitterness, and I realized that was closure, not his apology, but my freedom from needing it. Michael became a steady presence in my life. Emma met him during Christmas break. She watched him closely, testing him with sharp questions. Later, she whispered to me, "I like him. He's good for you." I smiled, but I also told her, "He's good with me. That's the point. I don't need anyone to be good for me. I just need someone who respects me as I am." She grinned. "You've changed, Mom." Yes, I had. The community center opened 2 years after I first sketched it. Women walked through its doors, some trembling, some angry, some lost. They found workshops, counseling, support groups. They found each other. I sat in the back of the first group session, listening to a woman speak about leaving her husband after 30 years of emotional abuse. Her voice shook as she said, "I don't know who I am without him." Another woman reached over, took her hand, and said, "You'll find out. We all are." Tears burned my eyes. This was why I had fought so hard. Not for walls or windows, but for this. One night, sitting with Michael, I told him, "I used to think betrayal ruined me, but now I see it broke me open." And through the cracks, light came in. He took my hand, and you let it stay. We sat in silence, the kind that felt like peace. By the time I turned 52, I no longer defined myself by what I had lost. I defined myself by what I had built, by who I had become. Not Daniel's wife, not Daniel's betrayal. Laura Thompson, architect, mother, writer, survivor, builder of new beginnings. And as I stood one evening in the community center lobby, watching women laugh and cry and hold each other, I whispered to myself, "This is my redemption. This is my freedom." The years that followed felt like a second life. The community center grew beyond anything I imagined. At first, it was one building with a handful of volunteers. Soon, donations poured in, programs multiplied. Women who had once sat trembling in the circle returned later as mentors, strong enough now to guide others. One afternoon, I walked down the hall and overheard a woman say to another, "If it weren't for this place, I don't know if I'd still be here." They gave me a reason to stand up again. I leaned against the wall, tears filling my eyes. It wasn't just brick and mortar, it was lives. It was proof that pain can turn into purpose. Michael was by my side through it all, not in a way that overshadowed me, but in the quiet, steady way of a man who knew I didn't need saving. He carried boxes, poured coffee, listened to long rants about zoning laws and budgets. He laughed at my exhaustion and made me sit down when I pushed myself too hard. Once, I asked him, "Do you ever feel like I don't need you?" He smiled, "You don't? And that's why being with you is the greatest gift. You choose me, every day. That matters more than being needed." His words sank deep. For so long, I had been defined by being needed by Daniel, by Emma when she was small, by everyone but myself. Now, love wasn't obligation. It was choice. Emma graduated, started her own career, fell in love. Watching her walk toward her own life, I felt both the ache of letting go and the pride of knowing she carried strength she had seen in me. One night she called, voice trembling, "Mom, he broke up with me. I don't know what to do." I listened, my heart squeezing. Then I told her the same words I had once told myself. "You feel broken now, but this won't destroy you. You'll learn you are without him, and that's when you'll shine." She sniffled, then laughed softly. "You sound like you've done this before." I smiled. "I have." It felt full circle, passing resilience down like a torch. Daniel drifted farther from our lives. Emma saw him occasionally, but even she admitted, "He's smaller now, like a shadow of who he used to be." I didn't hate him anymore. Hate requires energy, and I refused to give him any more of mine. Once, I even wished him peace. Not because he deserved it, but because I deserved to live unchained from bitterness. When Michael asked me to marry him, I hesitated. We were sitting in the garden, fireflies flickering, the smell of summer thick in the air. He handed me a simple ring, nothing flashy, just timeless. Laura, will you marry me? Tears filled my eyes, but fear rose too. Marriage had been a battlefield for me once. I wasn't sure I wanted that word again. I don't know, I whispered, I love you. But marriage, it feels like surrender, like losing myself. He took my hand, his thumb brushing gently. Then don't surrender, don't lose yourself. We can define it differently. This marriage can be partnership, not ownership, equality, not sacrifice, if the word bothers you. We don't even need it. I just want to walk the rest of my life beside you. Silence stretch, fireflies blink, my heart pounded. Then I realized this wasn't Daniel. This wasn't betrayal wrapped in promises. This was a man who respected my boundaries, who had proven with action that trust could live again. Yes, I said finally, voice trembling but clear. Yes. We married quietly, a small ceremony in the garden. No grand speeches, no false promises, just two people who had weathered storms and still chose each other. Emma stood beside me, her eyes shining. My closest friends laughed and cried, and as I looked around, I thought, this is what healing looks like. Not perfection, not erasing scars, but finding beauty in the cracks. Years passed, the center expanded to 3 cities, my writing gained a following. Women I had never met sent letters telling me how my words gave them courage to leave, to heal, to rebuild. At 60, I stood on a stage at a women's conference, looking out at a sea of faces. I told my story not polished, not romanticized, just raw and true. I told them about the night I almost carried a knife into a hotel, about the words that broke me. She makes me feel alive, about the loneliness, the rage, the despair. And then I told them about the warehouse, the community center, the laughter that returned to my life, about choosing myself, about learning that betrayal is not the end. The room was silent, every face locked on mine. Then the applause rose like a wave, thundering, unending. I closed my eyes, letting it wash over me, not as validation, but as connection. We were all in this together. Women who had been dismissed, betrayed, overlooked, and yet still here, still standing. That night, back in my hotel room, Michael poured me a glass of wine. He kissed my forehead and whispered, "Do you know how proud I am of you?" I smiled, resting my head against his shoulder. I'm proud of me too. As I grew older, I stopped fearing age. Each wrinkle, each gray hair, felt like proof of survival, proof that I had lived, endured, transformed, and in quiet moments, sitting on my porch watching the sun sink low, I thought of the girl I used to be, the girl who believed her worth depended on keeping a man happy. I whispered to her, "You made it. You're free now." Daniel died alone at 62, in a hospital bed after a heart attack. Emma told me over the phone. Her voice solemn, I felt. Nothing sharp, just a soft sadness for what could have been, for the man who had wasted his life chasing illusions. But I did not grieve him. My grief had burned out long ago. Instead, I held Emma when she cried, reminded her he had loved her in his flawed way, and let the past rest. The last time I visited the community center, I walked through the halls slowly, listening to voices, laughter, stories. A young woman stopped me, clutching my hand. "You don't know me, but this place saved me. You saved me." I shook my head, tears in my eyes. "No, you saved yourself. We just gave you a place to remember how strong you are." She smiled through tears. I left that day with my heart full. Now, in the quiet of my later years, I know this. Betrayal did not destroy me, it broke me open. It forced me to shed what no longer served me. It gave me the chance to rebuild, not as someone's wife, not as someone's shadow, but as myself. My story isn't a fairy tale. It's not neat, not easy, but it's real, and in its reality, it carries power, because I found redemption not in another person, but in myself. And that is the kind of ending that never fades. I sit on the porch tonight, the air warm, the sky streaked with gold. Michael's hand rests in mine, steady as ever. Emma's laughter drifts from inside the house, her children chasing each other through the hall. I close my eyes, breathe deep, and whisper, "This is enough, more than enough." And for the first time, fully, completely, I believe it. That's all for today's story. Thank you for listening. This is my channel. The tales I share, drawn from life or woven from imagination, are meant to offer you connection, reflection, and perhaps solace or newfound strength. If you long to see your own reflection in others' journeys, or seek a glimmer of light within the maze of emotions, subscribe to my channel. Listen with your heart. Explore the stories of life.